Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you see the presentation, the first slide?
Yes, ma'am.
You see? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to wish all of you Happy New Year, Happy New Indian Year, and I hope it will be successful and blessed for all of you. And I would like to extend my gratitude to Dakshi's team and personally to Dakshi's director, Mr. Akshit Kumar Adwaria, for this invitation. It's a great honor for me, especially on this auspicious day. And I was very touched by the enriching, enlightening talk by Professor Gauri Maholikar. And actually, I didn't want her to stop talking. Her speech was flowing like the river Saraswati. And because it was mentioned, the goddess Saraswati. And thank you for the beautiful prayer at the beginning of our meeting. This is the Tibetan image of the goddess Saraswati, which is called Yanchen Hamo in Tibetan. Literally, it means the goddess of the melodious voice. In Tibetan Buddhism, Saraswati is the consort of Manjushri, not Brahma, of course, in Hindu sense, but the consort of Manjushri, the Bodhisattva wisdom. The aim of my presentation today is to discuss the traditions and approaches to the concept of femininity in the context of Hindu and Buddhist tantrism, while reconsidering the concepts of feminism through Indic religious perspectives. Contemporary discussions of gender and feminism, as it was mentioned, are often framed through modern Western theoretical approach, which are frequently applied to non-Western religious traditions. However, such approaches may obscure indigenous conceptualization of the feminine that develop within their own philosophical, ritual, and cosmological framework. So this presentation seeks to contribute to the decolonization of feminist discourse by foregrounding Indian categories, thought, and examining how femininity is conceptualized within Hindu and Buddhist traditions themselves. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the feminine principles is not merely a social and gender category, as we heard so profoundly during the first talk, but represent fundamental aspects of cosmology, spiritual transformation, and enlightened awareness, often expressed through concept, as we heard, Shakti, these three aspects of Jnana Shakti, Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, also from the concepts of Prajna and the dynamic interplay of Prajna and Upaya, the wisdom and method principles. And probably surprisingly for some of you, the central focus of my presentation is the figure of the Dakini. I was lucky and happy that among so many different variety of the Shakti, the feminine principles, the Dakini wasn't mentioned. So I hope with my presentation, I will provoke your thoughts and hopefully contribute to some different and new conceptions of this very important figure. So Dakini is a polyvalent female entity whose nature ranges from terrifying, flesh-eating beings to enlightened manifestation of primordial wisdom. Traditional Hindu and Buddhist interpretations of Dakini will be presented contemporarily, highlighting both their shared tantric philosophical foundations and their distinct doctrinal development. The analytical approaches used to investigate the principle of femininity encoded in the Dakini derived from various attempts to classify their characteristics and roles. Through a contemporary analysis of selected categories, the aim is to construct a clear interpretative model of the polyvalent functions of the Dakini in Hinduism and Buddhism, and to explore how these traditions mutually influence and define one another. Several aspects of the role of Dakinis will therefore be examined in order to compare their place within the two traditions and to identify the symbolic and doctrinal codes of femininity embedded within them. And one of the most common classificatory approaches divides Dakini into two principal categories: divine or devata and human, manushya. This distinction appears in both Hindu and Buddhist tantrism, although it is applied on different bases, depending on different textual sources or ritual practices. In Hindu tantric traditions, the categories of Dakinis, as we can see, are similarly divided into divine and human forms, and their divine manifestation may be summarized as goddesses, demigoddesses, demons, and various animal or flying forms. While their human forms include female ascetics, witches, consorts, or spiritual wives, and women associated sometimes with death and cremation, sometimes with the transmission of different types of initiation, and the preservation and propagation of the tantric teachings. And these categories may be broadly distinguished between those of a primary and secondary importance. And according to my opinion, of course, which can be disputed, of primary importance are their roles as demigoddesses and attendants within the retinue of principal deities. I will mention some of them later, or as independent goddesses, as demonic figures, and as manifestations closely related to the figure of yogini. And the secondary role of the Dakini in Hindu tantrism are associated with the pre-patriarchal traditions of the mother goddess, yogic practices, cults of trees and animals, and symbolic themes related to the sexual energy and the topic of. And briefly, for now, in Buddhist tantric traditions, the categories of Dakinis are likewise divided into divine and human forms, although their classification reflects a more complex, multi-layer system related to different stages of Buddhist practice and to various manifestations of the Buddha and light nature. So I will start with a few words about Dakini in Hindu tantrism. The term itself, Dakini, has Asian origins and is found with multiple meanings depending on the different traditions. It appears as early as the famous Sanskrit grammar of Panini, composed around the 4th century. There, Dakini is used with the meaning of musician or attendant of Shiva. The term is also associated with the Sanskrit verb diyate, which means to fly, which has to do with one of the roles of the female images, namely to fly in the sky or to move freely in space. We'll come back to this symbol a little bit later. Dakinis derive from Indian native goddesses, which have an Asian history, and therefore it is difficult to pinpoint the period of their appearance. Originally, Dakinis occupied a minor role in the pantheon of Hinduism, mainly as attendants of the retinue of principal deities, but with the advent of the Tantrism, especially during the Gupta dynasty, their status changed. With the development of the tantric traditions in India, various non-Brahmanic goddesses were elevated to the supreme status in the cult of the mother goddess associated with the idea of Shakti, or the dynamic feminine force that envelopes the universe. Or we heard many beautiful meaning explanation of Shakti. The emphasis on Shakti, the active and creative power of the male deity embodied as his consort unites the various Hindu tantric traditions. Parallel to the emergence of the Tantras, the Puranas appear, emphasizing mythological elements and the importance of devotion. It is in this context that Dakini come to the fore as one of the minor deities of the non-Brahmanic. Some of the Puranas in which Dakinis appear, for example, are Manda Purana, Brahma Purana, Markandeya Purana, and so on. The earliest cult description of the Dakini appear in the Gandhar stone inscription found in Madhya Pradesh. This stone inscription documents the existence of a temple in Gandhar in around 5th century, and the Sanskrit inscription testifies to the construction of a temple in honor of Vishnu and a shrine dedicated to the 7 mother goddesses, Saptamatra. The first documented use of the term Dakini occurs in the description of this sanctuary, characterize them as a terrifying abode of the divine mothers. The term Dakini was originally associated with the figures in the entourage of the deities from the local non-Brahmanic traditions of India. Dakinis are accepted as a class of minor deities who serve dominant deities such as the wrathful goddesses Durga and Kali or Shiva. In the Brahmanda Purana, Dakinis appear among Shiva's retinue in the mountain Kailash. In Shiva Purana, they are described as one of the 9 companions of Durga, who at Shiva's request set out on their companion against Prajapati Dakshi. Like Kali and Durga, Dakinis represent marginal to Aryan society, the force of impure women or lower caste who are outlaws. Despite their identity, the Dakini remain in the role of minor gods. In some cases, as flesh-eating companions of Kali, they appear alongside the powerful demonic beings, Shakini, who are companions of Durga. In her role as goddess in Hindu Tantrism, Dakini is often associated with the 7 basic constituents or saptadhatus, or sometimes with one of the 6 chakras, energetic centers. In the Brahmanda Purana again, and particularly in the narrative dedicated to the goddess Lalita, Dakini is one of the deities who guard the chariot of Dandanath, the goddess of Lalita's army, who embodies the essence of the supreme goddess Mahat. In this text, Dakini appears as one of the 7 goddesses. Another text in which Dakini appears as one of the 7 goddesses is the 9th or 10th century Ujjika Mata Tantra. And in this text, Dakini appears together with Yakshini, Shankini, Kakini, Lakini, Rakini. And to these goddesses are offered the several substances of the body, or the dhatus. An almost identical enumeration of the goddesses can be found in the later text belonging to the same tradition associated with the cult of the deity Ujjika, which is called Srimad Tantra. The Ujjika Mata Tantra also lists 2 groups of 6 goddesses relating to each of the chakras. And just one example, the first denotes the creative path of energy through the 6 chakras, from Ajna, associated with the 3rd eye, to the root chakra, Muladhara, and the second group, which includes the Dakini, as well as the other goddesses, Rakini, Lakini, and so on. Or they can be vice versa. Here we can see Dakini along with other goddesses related with the chakras. Another tantric text, the Lyudmila Tantra, believed to have been transmitted by Shiva to Shakti, correlates the same 6 goddesses with the same 6 chakras as well as with the 5 elements, Panchakuta. And in this text, Dakini is related to the Muladhara chakra and the Prithvi, the earth element. In the classical Sanskrit texts, Dakini are described as hostile demonic beings inhabiting the secluded areas or cremation grounds. Such spaces were considered sacred because of the opportunity they provide for self-absorption, for meditation, for spiritual fulfillment. In early Hindu texts, Dakinis are described as feeding on human flesh, absorbing the life force of humans and dancing with ornaments made from the bones of corpses. In some passages of the Hindu Puranic literature, they are depicted as flesh-eating demons in the retinue of the goddess Kali, and identify with evil spirits of women who died during pregnancy or childbirth, as well as unfaithful wives. So there is a very negative connotation related with these images. And these peculiar witches are capable sometimes of causing death, disease, and infertility. In the Hindu Tantric tradition, Dakini are closely related to yoginis. The term yogini has multiplied meaning and often overlap those of Dakini. Yoginis can be tantric goddesses, incarnations of Mahadevi, demigoddesses, or women who have dedicated their lives to tantric practice, ascetic life, or possess magical. Yoginis, like Dakinis, blur the boundaries between goddesses and women because through rituals or other methods, spiritual methods, a female tantric practitioner or adept can become transformed into a yogini or attain divine status. In the Siddha Yogeshwari Mata, a tantric text from the Shaiva tradition of Vidyapitha, different types of yoginis are grouped into 2 types. Kulaja, or born in clans, also called Manushya, as a human, and Devata goddesses. The same idea that we apply to Dakini. From these 2 terms, we can conclude that the deification of woman is central to the image of yoginis and represent one of the most significant historical aspects of their tantra. The idea that the women are divine, or the goddesses can be manifested in women, in human beings. The same conclusion can be applied to the Dakini, the only difference perhaps being that yogini is a more inclusive term, the term of the Dakini. But both Dakini and yogini can be compared in terms of both of them being associated with the 3 spirits, mother goddesses, without magic or witchcraft, or due to the fact that they have the abilities to control life and death, and also the ability to fly. We can summarize that Dakinis are specific groups of yoginis when both refer to divine feminine nature. Dakinis can also be taken as a subgroup of yoginis, and in this role they are associated with Shakinis, another similar female forms. In them, in some instances, the terms are used as unitive, but in other instances, they differ. For example, in the secular text, Kathasarita's Sagaram, where the term Dakini is associated with cannibalistic rituals, while the term Shakini places more emphasis on sexual practice. Parallels are also known between the yoginis and dakinis in terms of their participation in rituals involving sexual practice. In this role, they are known as Dyuti, one of the different names for consorts or spiritual wives, or sometimes they are called Shakti, with the meaning of power. And such terms we find in the Shaiva text, Brahmaya Mala. Despite the semantic similarity of the three terms, yogini, dakini, and shakini, historically they differ. And the dakini is actually the oldest among them. In Hindu folk tradition, dakini are taken as a witch, or daini, a term that derives from dakini. I guess that for most of you, this is more popular image of the dakini related with the Hindu folk tradition. So dakini possess occult powers acquiring through specific rituals and rites and are used to magic, for example, to transform human into animals or birds. And again, briefly, dakini in the Buddhist tradition or the Buddhist tantric tradition. After dakinis appear in Shaiva texts and were later integrated in the secular tradition, they also found a place in Buddhist literature. They were initially accepted as heretical deities and gradually assimilated into the Buddhist tradition. They were initially accepted in the view of Tantric Buddhism as dakinis, become some of the most vivid manifestation of the Buddha Dharma or the Buddha nature, especially in female form. In the Buddhist tradition, they are revered as emanation of wisdom. Here we see quite different approach. Emanations of wisdom who hold the key to the most esoteric knowledge in Vajrayana Buddhism. They are associated with the wrathful female embodiments of enlightenment or enlightened energy, as well as with women of a certain spiritual realization. As we saw, the term is applied both to goddess, divine beings, and to women. Not sometimes all of the women, and sometimes particular women who have special qualities. And both of these forms of dakini intended to help tantric adepts to attain enlightenment and to preserve and propagate Buddhist teachings. The change in the acceptance of the image of dakini occurred under the influence of Buddhist meditation schools in 6th or 7th centuries, as a result of which they came to be revered as protectors of meditation and spiritual helpers who help to banish illusion and ignorance. And again, we have very deep cosmological, ontological, philosophical, and so on meaning. The process of assimilation of the early Hindu tantric dakinis began in the Mahayana Buddhist traditions of India. And the Indian origin of dakinis in Buddhist tantras and the biographies of the great yogis and yoginis is a very important example. In later Vajrayana Buddhism, tantric dakinis reappear in biographical literature and in countless of tantras texts relating their fierce and unpredictable temper. In its development in the Buddhist tantric tradition, especially that developed in Vajrayana Buddhism, the dakinis evolved from minor goddesses to a central symbol of meditative experience expressed in tantric literature, iconography, and ritual practice. The Buddhist tantric views of dakini, which differs from the way they are perceived in Hindu tantrism, is best expressed in the Tibetan translation of the term dakini, or khandroma, Kandruma, where the first part of the term ka means space or akasha in Sanskrit. Akasha represents the fifth element in the tantric system, and akasha or the space is directly related to the movement, as well as to the idea of the space, the manifestation of the enlightened nature. Nangwa in Tibetan, manifestation of invisible enlightened energy. In the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, Kandroma is a symbol of the celestial space, or Nam, which is all-encompassing, like the emptiness, Shunyata. And Kandroma, draw, derived from the verb to go, to move forward, or sometimes to fly. Kandruma is usually translated as a woman who walks, dances, or fly in the sky. Her ability to fly is associated with a term for walking in the sky, or kechari, kacho in Tibetan, a term which appears later in 9th century, especially in the tantric cycle Chakras. Kechari is also a name of a special form of Dakini that appears in Vajradhaka Tantra, again text belonging to the Chakras cycle, where the text describes 3 chakras, 3 centers, in which various forms of Dakini reside. For example, in the chakra of the mind reside Kechari, in the chakra of the speech reside Uchari, and in the chakra of the body reside Patalakshini. Dakini sometimes refers to individual deities, and at other times to a group of 5, 6, 8, 64, and so on divine images. They're usually described as older and wiser women, or sometimes as a younger manifestation. Both types of images are characterized by the dynamic and ever-changing flow of feminine energy. Their power, occupying a significant place in Buddhist teachings, is believed to be able to transform human weakness into wisdom and awareness. According to Vajrayana Buddhism, Dakinis are conceived as superhuman beings. We heard this, superwoman, superhuman beings who test the abilities and devotion of followers of spiritual teachings. Dakinis embody certain aspects of the experience of enlightenment, and their image is used for visualization and meditation during some Buddhist practices. In this function, especially in the so-called deity yoga, Klai Naujor, in Tibetan, they serve as Ishtadevata, or personal deity, or chosen deity, Idam in Tibetan. And as Idam, they embodies the potential of the practitioners. In Vajrayana, the Dakinis appear to be Idam, or Ishtadevata, of wisdom and higher knowledge. Traditionally, male Idams symbolize compassion and skillful means, or skillful methods, while the female ones symbolize wisdom and emptiness. We have also semi-wrathful Idams, who reveal the energy of passion and anger, and wrathful Idams, who represent the dynamic energy of strong anger. They have the ability to remove doubts, illusions, and different negative emotions. Dakinis embody both the traditional aspects of the female Idams as well as those of their semi-wrathful and wrathful forms. So they appear in peaceful, wrathful, semi-wrathful forms. They're believed to be able to incarnate in a variety of forms, as their enlightened nature is able to consciously stay on different manifestations. Since they represent an emanation of primordial wisdom that has varying degrees of awareness, These female images appear in the form that is able to most clearly convey the necessary knowledge or wisdom or experience. The classification of Dakini in the context of Tantric Buddhism is more complex comparing to the Hindu Tantrism because their elaboration in Vajrayana reach very deep philosophical, psychological, and ritualistic level. The most general classification in especially Tibetan Tantric traditions divides Dakinis into earthly and enlightened figures that embody primordial wisdom. So the earthly Dakinis or local Dakinis are demonic beings divided into 12 different types who are associated sometimes with the flesh-eating Vishakhas. These lower species are opposed to the wisdom Dakini or Jnana Dakini, who assist the adepts in their spiritual practice to the path of enlightenment. So we have two opposite faces of the Dakini, as we heard in the previous presentation, this positive, beneficial, and negative form of Shakti in general. And when remarkable women are considered as incarnation of wisdom Dakini, they are not very long, but long enough list in the history, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, of such women. And when this kind of women are considered as reincarnation of Dakini, they're described as possessing three bodies of enlightened nature, or Trikaya, Usum in Tibetan. Dharmakaya, at the Dharmakaya level, these are the Dakini who appear in the form as the goddess Samanta Bhadri or Kuntuzangmo. At the level of Sambhogakaya, the Dakinis appear in the form of various female idams, and at the Nirmanakaya level, Dakinis appear as human incarnations. In some of the classification, Judith Summer Brown proposed a very sophisticated system that divides the Nirmanakaya Dakinis into two types, outer, and outer. She also compares Sambhogakaya with inner Dakinis and Dharmakaya with secret. So they're just different types of classification with attempt to explain the different aspects of the enlightened nature, these figures of Dakinis. So the outer Dakinis are real women who are called Dakinis born of mantra. And the outer Dakinis are manifested from the enlightened worlds as deities. The inner Dakinis are spontaneously manifested and develop the nature of mind through the practice of different practice. For example, Mahamudra, Tempo, and Dzogchen. These are some of the highest practices in Tibetan Buddhism. The secret Dakinis show the ultimate level of spiritual attainment, the realization of the nature of mind beyond any form of duality, including gender differentiation. And in this role, they are the embodiment of self-realized original wisdom. The secret Dakinis symbolize the absolute nature of the goddess Prajna Paramita, Mahayana goddess, also known as the Great Mother or Yom Chenmo in Tibetan. This goddess embodies the principle of femininity, inseparable from the perfection of transcendental wisdom, or Prajna Paramita, Cherabki Parotu Chimpa. Is one of the paramita, the six perfections or paramita. Tantric texts describe historical women who are regarded as Dakini, as well as their role in the history of the Buddhist tradition. They can also manifest as female aspect of the so-called Jnani Buddhas or the Buddhas of meditations, 5 Jnani Buddhas, who as the embodiment of wisdom are presented in union with these 5 In this role, they are known as the Dakinis of the five families. The five families, Buddha family, as you can see, Vajra, Ratna, Lotus, Karma family, where the Dakinis appear as Buddha Dakini, Vajra Dakini, Ratna, Karma, Dakini, and so on. Here you can see their relation with the five different Buddhas of meditation. And among them, the highest and the most perfect form of Dakini is that which represents the synthesis of all the wisdoms and all the Buddhas, all enlightened beings. This is the concept, the so-called Sarvabhuta Dakini, the Dakini of all Buddhas. Here are depictions of these five Dakinis, or the Dakinis of the five families. And the various forms of these goddesses are believed to express different aspects of wisdom, whose fundamental nature is shunya, emptiness, tompani in Tibetan. The realization of emptiness in Vajrayana is associated with higher wisdom, both of which characterize the feminine principle manifest in the form of Dakini. It's very unique to the Vajrayana Buddhism and quite different from the Hindu tradition. At the same time, skillful methods, upaya, or tap in Tibetan, as well as bliss, ananda, or dewa, represent the masculine principle manifested in the form of its male counterpart, or Daka. So we have Dakini as the female, Daka as the male counterpart. Daka or power in Tibetan. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Dakas and Dakinis in their human manifestations are believed to work together to achieve higher spiritualization and to help beings overcome suffering, illusion, and so on. And in conclusion, the image of the Dakini, which encompasses diverse manifestations of the feminine principle, represents one of the most significant symbols of femininity in the spiritual traditions of India, and in this case in Tibet. Emerging from Asian Indian religious context and developing further within tantric traditions, not only in Tibet, but also in Nepal, Bhutan, in Mongolia, and in the Buddhist Republic of Russia, Kalmykia, Tuva, Buryatia, and so on, the Dakini embodies a complex understanding of femininity, of feminine power that transcends purely social or gender interpretations. One of the most distinctive aspects of the tantric cult of the Dakini, present in both Hindu and Buddhist traditions, is the sacralization and deification of the feminine, linking the Dakini to related figures such as the mentioned yoginis, shakinis, and so on. These figures express indigenous Indic conceptualization of feminine power, in which the feminist is understood not merely as a social identity, but as a dynamic spiritual principle associated with transformation, with wisdom, liberation, and freedom. In this sense, tantric traditions present a unique framework for interpreting femininity. The figure of Dakini contributes to the broader effort to decolonize the idea of feminism by highlighting philosophical and religious models in which feminine agency is embedded within cosmological and soteriological structures. Within Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the feminine principle is closely connected to transcendental wisdom, prajna, paramita, and to the realization of the ultimate nature of reality. By examining such Indic representations of the feminine and their implication in Tibetan and Vajrayana Buddhism as a whole, we contribute to a deeper understanding of how Hindu and Buddhist traditions articulate alternative visions of femininity that enrich contemporary discussions on spirituality, gender, discussions on decolonization of feminist thought, as well as the reclaiming the Shakti in broader sense, as well as one of the motto of Dakshi, the revival of India's Asian wisdom and cultural heritage. So, very briefly, some of the bibliography that I use. If some of you are interested, I can send you more information on this topic from different perspective. Dhanyavad, thank you. This was just a brief, let's say, invitation for you for a hopefully short discussion, because as far as we have all you bright students, scholars, experts, and first of all, most of you Indians who have much more deep or profound knowledge than me as a Western on Indian culture, I would be very grateful to hear your reflection, your thoughts, of course, your questions, if I'm able to answer. I hope so. Thank you once again for this opportunity. This is not the end. I hope we open the discussion for sharing thoughts, opinions, critiques. I'm open for that as well. Dhanyavad.
जी दिशा जी.
Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, ma'am, for this very beautiful session. We learned a lot. Ma'am, a few days back, I was reading about the yoginis and all. And when I was reading about their evolution, I came across certain texts, like they evolved into certain, like according to some uh, theories, they evolved as in like from Mahishasur Mardini, then Matrix, and then Yoginis. And like in one of the texts, which is named as Kularnav Tantra, it is stated that Yoginis originated from 8 metrics. And now in your presentation, you have connected them with the Dakinis as well. So my question is like, in such metaphysical understanding, we see these kinds of folds and evolutions, right? Like, how do we interpret them in the real feminist discourse? Like, does it help us in any way to understand the changes that are like depicted in metaphysical way, but they might have been historical in nature? How can we interpret that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful question. Here we comes to the probably one of the main focus of your own research and work as part of the Dakshi's organization, connecting the past, the present, and the future. So when we talk about history, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but relying on the historical sources, especially in the terms of India history with centuries back, can we really rely 100% to the historical sources? Doesn't matter on which concepts we are talking about. And this is hard. It's not easy task to do that, especially if you want to trace the origin, the evolution of one or another very deep, important images or terms like the yogini or yoga or yogin. It's very hard to trace the beginning, the first moment of appearing of such terms. I mentioned probably among yogini and dakini. Dakini, it's older concept and term based on the different sources, textual or archaeological sometimes, but they can be different opinions on that. So if we leave this to historians, archaeological to prove is this is first or not, but you know that in terms of Indian culture, history and mythology are very strongly connected. Sometimes for you, it's easy to believe and to accept that, okay, based on the myths, legends, history, we truly believe that was existed. It's true. We don't need historical evidence and so on. So I'm going a little bit far away from your exact question, just to show that we can comprehend in a very different ways the idea of history, but always keeping it somewhere there is a background. What is really matters, what is really important is what happened in our present day, how, as you said, we applying this understanding with this concept in our point of view, in our contemporary discourse. So we can always try to understand such important concepts like Dakini or Yogini or Shakti, even based on this historical text or evidence. So the textual tradition is number one, probably the ability to be able to read, understand, preferably in original text, of course, this initial text tracing the first beginning of appearance of these concepts, but then focusing on the idea, what does it mean in our daily life? Is there something that is dramatically changed and which enable us, doesn't allow us to understand what exactly it means? Yogini in these terms. Okay, we can say simply practitioner of yoga as a woman. You personally, if you practice, you can be called yogini. But is it true? Is this really means that every woman who practice yoga by definition transform into yogini? The same idea like the yogini which we see depicted in the temples of Odisha, for example, and so on, as the embodiment of the divine as a goddess. Can we accept every woman as a goddess? Yes and no. Depends on the context. In tantric tradition, there are texts. All the women's, you have to practice this pure vision, part of the somewhat the pure vision of accepting, seeing the woman as a goddess. But this is a practice. This is a tantric method of transformation. So as a researcher, as a young scholars like you, what I can suggest is always find the context, the point, and try to focus as shortly to the point that you want to research or the idea that you want to prove. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Monica ji, you may ask your question.
First of all, greetings, ma'am, and thank you so much for this such an amazing and insightful session. And I was wondering how interesting the concept of yogini could be. So, out of curiosity, ma'am, as our Navchetna, it is centered more on Indic idea of feminism. So, ma'am, because from last few days, I'm studying comparative analysis of different traditions, their idea of feminism. So, out of curiosity, I just want to ask, ma'am, to what extent might the conceptual vocabulary of contemporary feminist discourses shape or even limit our understanding of, the idea of Indic idea of feminism? Because when I talk about India, it has different tradition. It has a culmination of different tradition that we got the idea of feminism. Whether it is the Advait, whether it is a Samakya which talks about Prakriti or Purush, whether it is now we discuss about the Tantricism. So on what extent these different kind of vocabularies, different kind of impacts of different cultures or dominant frameworks specifically, I would like to quote that they impact the understanding of our Indic idea of feminism.
Can you please synthesize in a very short exact question, because this is too broad and I guess it will take a long time or maybe one step dedicated.
My question is basically what is the impact or what extend the our conceptual the different vocabulary, the different discourses, feminist discourses talk about, what they are impacting, how they're impacting the Indic idea of feminism.
This concept that we are mentioned, like yoginis, Shakti.
It's not
Dakshi,
about Indians, it's like, global frameworks of feminism. I was studying just a comparative analysis, so that impact I want to know.
How the Western idea of, or in general ideas of femininity impact the Indic perceptions.
Yes, ma'am. Overall, all the different ideas, not just of Western, it's Eastern, or it's different cultures that impacting.
Yeah, actually, maybe that would be the proper question to Professor Gauri at the beginning, because it's very important, the point of view. So I guess this will be the better question to some Indian scholar, because I, as a Western, dedicating a long period of time to understand a glimpse of Indian culture, and can say actually that in conclusion, I understand very, very, very little on that. So maybe my point of view will be the opposite, how the Indian perception of femininity can impact or contribute to the global idea of feminism, and how this understanding of the divine nature, the goddesses, the different aspects of the feminine Shakti appearance can contribute to the opening and expansions of the Western perception of feminism. Because it's not only about the resistance that it was mentioned, it's not only this fight for equanimity between the women and the men, it's feminism, femininity. Feminism should be more than that. So I can say that Western perception are a little bit limited, because we are born, raised with one perception in the religions which were adopted in Christianity, which are patriarchal religion. There is a creator, which is in male sense, God, let's say. And the idea of goddesses, of the female appearance, even the mother, they are very obscured. They are very hidden. So initially in the Western society, this divine perception of femininity is missing. So that's why maybe the conversation will start from the Asian foundational understanding of femininity from Indian perspectives to the Western ideas of feminism, if you understand me correctly, and vice versa, of course. They mutually impact themselves. But as I said, this is a very broad talk, very interesting discussion, which can include many different points of view.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Is there any other question? If yes, so you may raise your hand and ask your question. Nandini, please.
First of all, thank you, ma'am, and I am grateful to join this session with you and on my favorite topic, that Dakshi and these all things. I personally have interest in all these topics because they are the same Sevak of Ma Kali's saying it goes in the history. But the question is, what is the functional difference between Dakini, Yogini, and Shankini in practice, not just in mythology or theology? How we differ them in practice?
Can I ask you, have you ever met a yogini in India?
Again, ma'am, please.
Have you ever met a yogini? Some women that you know, oh, she's a yogini. Have you ever met in person
In
yogini?
India, I like not in real life, but just if you know about Indian culture, you know that Jagaran is a function where devis are called and their aarti and all those worship is done. So there is, I met sometime those females that said that yogini has come to them, and then they tell us about future or something like that. So that's the worshipful concept and the soul transformation, something like that, if I say so. And when
Same as a women, or is a angels or some kind of creations?
No. If as a woman, as a like simple
Yeah.
woman, a normal woman is worshipping during the all the park work is going, and suddenly a soul comes into her. That is called yogini. That yes, now she now embraces the spiritual soul of yogini, and you can ask her question about future or about your own self. Then they will tell like, okay, this might gonna be in the future. Like you may be the best speaker in the future. So it goes like that.
And have you met Dakini in person?
No, that's not. I'm not.
No, this is scary. This is scary.
Not scary, but what I believe that they are the Sevika of Ma Kali, the most closer one. So if they met you in any way or form, I want to meet them in a form like I'm their daughter. They are also the part of love. The immense love they can show to their daughter is so much that I can explain. I read it few stories of in the Das Mahavidya's book that I can't explain there because they are so like they are not spoken in the way. There is a proper way to speak about them. And
Yeah.
if Dagni, I really wish that whenever I meet them and in any way they see me as their daughter, not something like practitioner or something. Because love is already the always true form of devotion to anything.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if you realize or not, but you gave a wonderful answer to your own question.
Uh-huh.
And I think, as I said, most of you know much better and have authentic experience because you are raised in this culture with all these memories and experience from the folklore, from the tradition, from the literature, and so on and so on. But from my point of view, depends on the traditions. If we take the Agori, for example, these female ladies who are dedicated to the practice itself, they can be called yogini as well, right? Or sattvi or sannyasini, this lady who are devotional practitioner, they can be yogini in a way. So from my perception, very limited, as I said, Dakini has a little bit more negative connotation in the practical life in our contemporary time in India. I can maybe there are a lot of secrets, suspicious, superstitious about this image, and the people don't like to even talk so much about it. Dakini, I mean, as female figures, as witches or women who have this women who have these magical powers. But in the context of Tibetan Buddhism, if I may open the door and answer in this sense as well, in Tibet, not only in Tibet itself, but in the Tibetan communities in India and in different parts of the world, Dakini or Kandruma can be it can be first of all a name to the lady Kandruma. This can be a female spiritual teachers or women who dedicate their life to the practice itself. So yogini is it is used as a practitioner, just a practitioner, in the same way as a Dakini, but Kandruma or Dakini both are used the Sanskrit and Tibetan version. They can be used for women with special spiritual abilities, emanations of wisdom, sometimes reincarnation of goddesses or another female practitioners like Yeshitsogyo and so on and so on. So, I mean, sometimes they are yogini and dakini has the same meaning. Sometimes they can be like more specific. We can see specific use in the different traditions, contexts, lineages, and so on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hi, Thank you so much, ma'am, for that truly insightful and thought provoking address. Your reflections have given us a deeper perspective on the theme and have certainly left the audience enriched and inspired. We are sincerely grateful for your time and for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. And now, as we move towards the conclusion of this enriching session, I would like to request Ms. Kashish Mishra ji, the Chief Executive of Dakshi, to come forward and extend the vote of thanks.
जी नमस्कार guest, esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, and participants. We as we get to end of this enlightening session, we be exploring the Indian idea of feminism. Extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one for making this seminar truly meaningful and impactful. I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to our honorable chief guest for the inspiring presence and for provoking insights. Sincere appreciation also to Dr. Klasanova for enlightening lecture into the concept of Dakshi in Hindu and Buddhist Tantrism. I would like to thank Dakshi for his constant support and guidance. This seminar has been a deepful discussion and a step towards the essence of Shakti. Statement gratitude to all the participants and for your active participation. With this, we conclude today's session, hoping that ideas should continue to inspire throughout time and meaningful action. With this, we conclude day 1 and invite you to join day 2. Thank you so much.
And now, as we move towards the conclusion of today's session, let us follow the tradition of Dakshi, praying together for Vajra to lead us.
Prachi ji, please lead us for the Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam, Malayaj Sheetalam, Sasya Shamalam Mataram, Vande Mataram. शुभ्रज्योत्स्नां पुलकितयामिनीं फुल्लकुसुमितद्रुमिदलशोभिनीं सुहासिनीं सुमधुरभाषिणीं सुखदां वरदां मातरं वन्दे मातरम् कोटि कोटि कंठ निनाद करले कोटि कोटि भुजे धृत खर करवाले अबला किनु मायत बुले बहुबल धारिणीं नमामि तारिणीं रिपुदल वारिणीं मातरं वन्दे मातरम् तुमि वेद्या तुमि धर्म तुमि रिधि तुमि मर्म त्वं हि प्राणाः शरीरे बाहुते तुमि मा शक्ति हृदये तुमि मा भक्ति तुम्हारे प्रतिमा गढ़ी मंदिरे मंदिरे वन्दे मातरम् त्वं हि दुर्गा दश प्रहरण धारिणी कमला कमल दल विहारिणी वाणी विद्या दायिनी नमामि त्वां नमामि कमलाम् अमलाम् अतुलां सुजलां सुफलां मातरं वन्दे मातरं श्यामलां सरलां सुष्मितां भूषितां धरणीं भरणीं मातरं वन्दे मातरं वन्दे मातरं वन्दे मातरम्.
Thank you, Prachi ji. As we conclude, the first day of Navchetna 26, we eagerly await your presence in the upcoming sessions over the next 2 days, promising more insightful discussions and meaningful learnings. Jai Hind, Jai Dakshi.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. And you are more Indian than some Indians themselves. Now we accept everyone in this universe and calls as Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam in Rigved. That means the whole world is a family. So the West, East, that is the divisions created by the modern societies, modern people. But the ancient Indian scriptures and societies tells us about that the whole world and whole earth is one. So oneness is the basic idea in the scriptures of India. Thank you so much for joining, and God bless you.